Hey, Chico. Welcome to the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast, the show where women share their personal power tools, the techniques, strategies, and ways of being which have enabled their business and life success. I'm your host, Lovelda Vincenzi, a female speaker mentor, speaker, and event host on a mission to unleash authentic, powerful female voices onto the world. In today's episode, we'll be uncovering the power tools of Fabella. Stories equal visibility equals diversity equals equality. And it's Kay's mission to amplify the voices of underrepresented leaders to build a more inclusive world. Kay launched her business as the Story Finder in 2014 and has worked with startups to Fortune 500 hundreds across 17 industries to grow their brands and audiences through the power of storytelling. A Filipina American who calls Spain home, she now works with companies and leaders as a D&I consultant and has been featured in Forbes, Fast Company, Thrive Global, Huffington Post, and Alpay. In this episode, Kay shares the drive behind her mission and the fundamentals which have enabled her to successfully serve so many underrepresented leaders globally. Remember, all of the links shared in this show can be found in the show notes. And there is only one way, I say one way, to make sure that you get your regular fix of this show, and that is to hit that subscribe button right now to make sure that you get updates as soon as a new show is added. Well, that is quite enough for me for now. So let us get on with the show. Hey, welcome back to the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast. Now, today's show, we're going to be talking in depth with Fabella. Now, wait a minute before you get all excitable. This is going to be a good one because we're going to be intertwining two things. One, story and lifestyle, and the other part, how to really have a really fabulous life. Because this is one woman, when it comes to looking after oneself, she don't be putting it second. It'd be right up on the top of her list. So I need to get some cues as to what she does, how she does it, why she does it. Because especially right now, I want to understand the secrets of really like looking after me. I prefer to have somebody else do it, but if I'm going to do it myself, then I want to understand how that works. Kay, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Lovelda.
You have a really, really interesting path in terms of what you do. So you do like storytelling and diversity stuff at like the same time?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. They sound different on paper, but there's actually a really amazing connection between them. And so how I got started doing it really is, so I'm based in Spain, where I'm recording this at the time of this episode, where I think I'll be for the foreseeable future as we are under lockdown.
Oh, it's great fun.
Oh, so fun. But I'm originally from the US, as you can tell from how I sound if you're listening to this. And I've been based here for 10 years. And so how I kind of got here was essentially I became a storyteller from a very young age. For anybody who is listening and has, we'll say, a non-European looking face, you learn story because of the second question. The first question being, where are you from? And the second question being, where are you really from? And I think that you have an amazing opportunity in front of you. And I know there are people that fall different sides around this. This has caused debate in many places. But for me, I could either clench my fists or open my hands and share my story. Mm-hmm. And that's how I learned the power of story from a very young age. And as I've gotten older, as I've traveled to different places, being a daughter of immigrants myself, now immigration seems to run in the family because here I am in Spain.
Y'all don't like to stay still.
Apparently not. I mean, we just want to see the world. It's been really cool to see how, as I have immigrated, as I've added chapters to my own story, as I've met people from all over the world, whether my clients or my friends, it's been a really fantastic just confirmation of the fact that stories are super powerful. Mm-hmm. And I think over time, as I started to do build my own coaching practice, my consulting firm, I started working with individuals who I was just naturally more drawn to as somebody who is a minority or identifies as a woman of color, because a lot of the stories that I wish that I'd seen even growing up a stone's throw away from Hollywood and LA, which is like one of the most diverse places on earth, like London, I didn't see faces that looked like mine growing up. I didn't see faces on book covers, or, you know, I didn't have somebody that I could kind of look up to and say like, oh, you're somebody I could aspire to be or kind of emulate my life around. And I didn't realize until I was older how powerful that was. And there's studies about this, absolutely. But because of my own background and my lived experience, I was naturally drawn to working with men and women who were from underrepresented groups, because those stories I've found are so much more powerful because, one, we don't see them as often. We're hungry for them too. And three, it's not even, we don't even realize the power of, you know, that story being visible sets the tone for generations after us that we can't even anticipate, that, you know, depending on your community, that look like you, that love like you, that live like you, that really empowers that next generation of people to aspire to be more, or the people around you to have a more broader collective definition of what looks like success, right? And so because of that, like that naturally led to, you know, corporate work. And so corporate started to hire me for things related to personal branding, related to story, related to visibility, especially, unsurprisingly, groups that struggle with that. And there's a natural parallel there. Women, obviously, other underrepresented groups, people of color, multicultural folks like me, or shout out to my multi-hyphenates, you know who you are when you're listening to this. All the folks who feel like their story didn't really fit into a box, or that it didn't quite align with the mold of, say, culture fit, for lack of a better term, in a company. And that then led to, you know, starting to do corporate work, working with ERGs, especially for women's ERGs here in Spain and in different parts of Europe and back in the US. And that's kind of how I naturally evolved into the diversity and inclusion work. So I swear it's all connected. And like every good story, it's not linear, but it's interesting.
It really is. I mean, there's so much in what you've just said. Like, I mean, so many layers to it, because you would think, oh, it's a really different stance on, or take on, what we consider to be storytelling. Because normally we're thinking of storytelling in terms of a brand story, or storytelling in terms of a personal story. But I love that you've taken it that step further to say, well, what if we could bring more of the stories that we hear less of, so that they become more of the norm, you know? So what if the Hollywood stories, and it's such a beautiful connection back to corporate culture. You know, if you've got a company in which people are predominantly from a particular nationality and a particular type of background, and then you've got somebody from a different background and a different culture, and they're doing their best to make a little leeway in that. But nobody has that kind of context and that understanding. And you're so right, the power of being able to see faces like yours. And I think sometimes we completely underestimate it, right? It's kind of like, oh, there's loads of them. But I know for me, when I really sat down and started to think, well, who are the big female people like me I could look up to? Like if I was thinking, you know, great quality female speakers in my space doing what I do, who could I emulate? And it really, like, the list gets short real quick.
It's small. Exactly.
So I think it's wonderful that the work that you're doing to bring those sort of people together in more ways. So how did you end up in the corporate space, really? Because I love that I'm serious, because I work with so many women who've got a story that they want to tell, but the perspective is very, very different. So I'm like totally excited. Like, this is so different to look at it from the space of, well, where would you take storytelling in a corporate environment? Because normally the default from speaking is to say, oh, we'll talk about your brand story.
It's true.
I'm guessing that's not what you're doing.
It's so funny. You would think that, but again, because I love turning things on their head, it's very similar. I think and this is something I know you absolutely agree with as well, that everybody, with whether or not they believe it, has a personal brand. Whether you're working for a company, or you're operating your own business, or you're a speaker or a freelancer, everybody has a digital footprint. And that digital footprint is the defining, business card and reputation builder, and all of the things, all of the experiences, all of the knowledge that you bring to the table, that is essentially your digital calling card for the rest of your life. And that doesn't matter on that doesn't depend on whether or not you are in a company or not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that even, especially now, how many people have I worked with who started in group workshops and then started to work with me individually, who came from corporate, who are still at corporate, but are looking to, well, I know that visibility is important, but I want to be a speaker within my company. I want to be a better negotiator. I want to lead meetings better. I want to be the person that's chosen for panel events. And I think that's because more people are seeing rather than I'm going to go work for a job and then stay there for 20, 30 odd years until retirement. I feel like that's a long gone concept at this point. But they're thinking more of their future. They're thinking of, how do I not just, especially if you're from an underrepresented group,
Mm-hmm.
how do I not just get my message out there within my company, but how do I also show people outside of the company what it is that I'm doing here internally to make the company culture, or even just social change for our particular group or demographic, feasible for them and for others who are coming after us. And so yeah, I think that everybody is seeing it from a standpoint of, I am a brand even within the company.
Mm-hmm.
So the same principles apply.
And do you find that the branding for the underrepresented minority group, that how you brand, that process, do you think that's different?
I think so.
How so?
I think so. Yeah, I think there's, unsurprisingly, and there's whole studies on this, and I won't geek out too much, but I'm happy to send those show notes your way because I love the research stuff.
I do kind of want to geek a little bit.
I love the research rabbit holes. What can I say? It's like when you guys are on Wikipedia, and then all of a sudden you're on like a completely different page. Like, how did I get here? Like, it's been 2 hours. This is not what I started this Google search for. But no, I think there's tons of studies around this related to the fact that our notion of identity as individuals, especially if you come from underrepresented groups that you don't see in the media, just looking at media, actually erodes our sense of self and erodes our sense of self-identity and our capacity for what it is that we're allowed to be, or what we can imagine that we are allowed to be. Because if you are from a group that has been unfortunately relegated to stereotypes and kind of caricatures, I know as an Asian American, that's something there's plenty of examples of. If you're from a Black American or a Black British person, there's like very kind of set stereotypes that you're boxed into, and how detrimental that really is to not just your sense of self, but also your cultural sense of self. So I think that diving into that is really important when I work with individuals from minority groups, and especially when and I'm not even just talking about minority ethnic, there's even, people who are differently abled, who haven't seen versions of themselves reflected back to them. I worked with a woman who was deaf, and when she lost her job, like you're required to, at least in the US, explicitly say that you have a disability. And she knew that she wasn't going to get an interview. Right? So we had to work on building her personal brand to continue to move her cause forward and move her business forward, because she had to start a business. She had no other choice. So really sitting first from that place of understanding, I have to work with people at the start of their journey who may not have necessarily realized that it's not just about my story. It's the story that I'm portraying for other people who are from my community can see as something that's empowering. And so that shift has to happen first, right? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to like take up an activist flag or like, go rallying the next day and say I'm going to lead an ERG tomorrow. Like, you don't necessarily have to do that, but to understand that the things that have made you different, that you have either felt ashamed about, or have struggled to find belonging around, or have maybe kept hidden or swept under the rug for whatever reason, because it was just more convenient for your different narrative to not be even touched. It's giving somebody first from an underrepresented group the reframe around their own life story first, and then giving them the power to decide, well, you can share that. And now that you're not seeing it from a place of pain, but you're seeing it from a place of power, you can also then decide if you want to be the standard bearer for a group of people simply by showing up and simply by empowering others because they now see you as an example. And I think that's a really powerful thing.
I am so excited about the work that you're doing. And honestly, I love the stance on it. Like
when I started doing world-class female speakers, I'll be honest, I really did not set out to have any sort of freaking cause. I was like, I'm not that person. I'm not an activist of any description. I'm not standing out in the cold. I'm not sitting in a tent. Like, I'm not that person. And, but I was just fascinated by, like, why is there a difference? Like, when it comes to men and women on stage, why is there a difference? And I think there's always two parts to at least the narrative around inclusion and diversity. You've got the real life challenges and problems. You've got the cultural bias. You've got the unconscious bias that is happening anyway. It's there. It's a thing. Like, we're not going to ignore it. And fighting that battle to me just feels insane. I'm kind of like, it's too big. I don't know where to start. You know, that's where government legislation and company policy and those sorts of things help to put a framework in place to give some space, at least, for something new to develop. But the bit that always excited me is the personal narrative, the individual. How am I looking at the world? Am I looking at this as a problem? And it's not about living under a rock and not recognizing that there's a difference, that there's a challenge, that there's unconscious bias that you're up against, that the way that you present yourself is going to be interpreted in a particular way, that you kind of have to, in a couple of sentences, shock people out of the default of what they think is going to happen. Right? Like, they're expecting one voice and one attitude and something else comes out. And that's normally where you can kind of make that break. But that's the thing we have power over. That's the thing we have control over. And so I get asked quite often, like, you're doing this stuff with female speakers, like, have you experienced, is it because you experienced something? And I'm like, no, but then I never look for it. I just kind of go out and, you know, you can hire me because I'm female and I'm a woman of color. I don't care if that's the reason you hire me the first time, but you better believe the reason you hire me the second time is because I'm damn good at what I do. Right?
Amen.
I am okay with the first hire being because you need to check a box. It doesn't bug me. You know, women need a space on that stage. If I'm going to be the woman who's going to do it, I'm going to do a darn good job, do female, you know, women around the world proud because of the way I've shown up. But you better believe the next time you hire me is because I'm good. It's nothing to do with anything else. That will be the reason why I'm hired again. And I think sometimes the need for it to be a particular way can kind of fault the way we turn up against this sort of backdrop of unconscious bias and backdrop of challenge. Whereas kind of going into it aware of the challenge, but navigating it anyway, not looking for the problems. They're there. Like, I'm not going to go looking for the mines. I don't need them to blow up in my face. I know they're there. What I'm looking to do is avoid them. I'm just going to keep going and kind of go, that one went off there, so I'm not going to head in that direction, right? So I love that the work that you're doing is very much looking at self and thinking about how am I relating to this and what can I do, and putting people in a position of power. I'm like blown away. I just think it's beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, darling, beautiful. Kay, now I got to ask you the big question, because with the work that you're doing in terms of the way you're empowering people, I really want to understand, when it comes to women and power, you know, we kind of say we want more powerful women. We want women to really stand out there and kind of be seen and be heard and be in their power. But I think there's lots of definitions of what the frick that actually means. So I would love to hear from your perspective, with your background. How do you define a powerful woman? What do you think makes a woman powerful?
I think the most powerful women know that they don't have to ask for permission to be who they are. And I think that means not just who you are in terms of as a woman, but all of the complex, complicated, strange, simple aspects of your identity that make all of you. And then see and acknowledge that that's where you draw your strength from, because that's what your truth is, what you have, what you've lived through, the different identities that you draw from at any given point in time. You don't have to apologize for any of them. You are enough in all of them. And anyone who then from that place of power can show up and turn what would be considered no's, because women do feel a lot of no's and face a lot of no's, into next steps, into moving them forward. Because I think, from coming back to what we were saying earlier about, you know, not approaching the spaces where we could be seen as less than as people who accept the narrative of less than because of our gender. And
there were so many mic drop moments in there. I'm getting chills.
Yeah, and just owning every aspect of who you are and not apologizing for it. I think that's what makes a really powerful woman.
Do not apologize for being you. Whoa. Well, I know some people listening today needed to hear that. Like, I just know there are some people, like, something happened in the last couple of days and they needed to hear there is nothing for you to apologize for. Nothing. Just turn up, be you, own you, do all of you. Girl, okay. Okay, I mean, we're going to need to get to the crux of this now, because now you've got me like, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm like juiced. I'm kind of sitting like on the edge of my seat. If you're watching on YouTube, I keep kind of moving around a lot because I'm like, oh, so good, so good. So, okay, if I were to be real mean, which I am going to be, welcome to my home. I'm going to be a meanie. If I were to be really mean and ask you to kind of survey your life and tell me, like, and boil it down to like 3 things, 3 tools, techniques, strategies, or ways of being that you would say have been the most defining things for your success, what would they be? I did say it was a mean question.
3?
So, 3, only 3, like your whole life. Like the whole life, just 3 things.
Oh, wow. I would say the first one would be writing.
Okay.
The second one would be meditation. And the third one would be yoga.
I sense there's a theme.
Yes, there is. I'll let you figure it out, viewers and listeners.
So yoga, you writing a yoga book?
Almost, yes. That's book 3.
Yoga, meditation, and writing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do them at the same time. Well, yoga and meditation you can do, but you can't write and do yoga and meditation at the same time.
That would take some skill.
I'm like, that's a serious yogi pose. Like, you know, that's like cores of steel or something.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, stop me guessing. What's the theme?
I would say, because, and you rightly pointed this out at the beginning of our conversation, all the work I do is with self. That if I'm not taking care of myself and I'm not regularly tuning into who Kay is today or in this moment or in this hour or whatever I happen to find myself, then I can't show up fully for others. And I've learned that early on, thankfully, which is good. not in a painful way, but I learned it early on, and early enough that it's something that has really guided me through every decision, especially the last 10 years. And I think has really served me well as not just an individual and as a person, but as a business owner as well.
How exactly do you apply these? And the reason I'm asking is people are going, okay, cool. So I'll get up in the morning, I'll do like a yoga or something. And then, I don't know, I'll write a blog post but I'm guessing that's not what you mean.
Not exactly. No, you're right. And I know you're a very practical person, so I will get into this as practically as possible for you.
Something people might be able to say, okay, self-care, when Kay says writing as self-care,
yeah,
what does that mean as a principle? Like, you know, because sometimes people can't piece the 2 things together. How is writing self-care? What exactly am I writing? Am I writing in the morning? Am I writing in the evening? Is it writing to-do lists? Like, what is the act of self-care in writing?
Yeah, for me, so writing, and because a lot of what I do with story finding for people or diving into people's stories is related to writing it out, because that's ultimately what we're doing, is getting their their story on paper or in some way that we've recorded it to then put it out into the world. It's really easy for somebody like me who I often say that I have an antenna on overdrive. I feel like that's what my image is. Like, I'm just always absorbing things. And so it's really important for me to be able to tap into what's my voice on this. And so when I say writing, one of the practices that has served me incredibly well over the last 10 years and moving forward is journaling. Because if I'm not able to tune into what I think is an individual, then it's, if I'm not able to self-reflect enough to tune into what I really want out of life and how I want to show up for others and move through the world, then I'm always going to be just reacting to what's in front of me. And so journaling is a really great practice for me. And again, there's no right way to do this. As somebody who, I don't even do it consistently enough. Like, I'm not the person who has the 12-point morning practice, set up every morning, like, oh, I have to do all of these things. It's just, I think of it as a toolkit. Like I say to my husband, my Spanish husband, Javi, I can feel when there's almost like a block in terms of thoughts. And as soon as I sit down to journal and I just free write, whether it's over the course of a week or a month or however long it is that I need to sort of sit and be and process things, like whether it's collective trauma like a pandemic or, dealing with loss of, a family member or a friend, I have to sit with that and figure out how I feel about it and give myself space to process it. And the way that I do that is through journaling. And that could be in the morning, in the evening, it could be whenever I feel like it. Could be, sometimes I use the Day One app on my phone because it's just easier if I'm out and about commuting. But getting my thoughts on something and out of my head helps me process things a lot better and tap into what myself in this moment needs to say.
Love that. I personally love journaling. Like, it's been one of my favorite tools. And like you say, there's so many different ways of applying it. I love what you say about being able to see yourself in it. Like, and I would kind of interpret that as, what is my truth in this scenario? So I find it really helpful, especially when you've got so many voices and it's like, there's so much going on in here, or there's some sort of block. Sometimes it's like, literally, I feel like I'm schizo, like I'm sitting there having a conversation with myself in my journal. So it will be like, why am I resisting launching this sales page? Like, what is it? What's going on here? Because if I'm sitting on it for 2 weeks and I'm telling myself I'm super excited about this is the best thing since sliced bread, but I can't write anything on a piece of paper, I don't seem to be able to find the words to say to somebody, then just that bit of saying, well, what is my resistance here? What am I missing? So sometimes I use it just as a pure rant. It's like, I'm so angry and I feel this, and I just need to actually, when I see the words down, I'm like, oh shit, maybe I need to have a look at that. But sometimes it's a specific question where I just think, what's going on here? And I think, well, I'm just going to write the question, and then whatever comes to me, I'm just going to keep writing the answers and see what comes out. And honestly, sometimes the shifts I've had personally in just having that exercise of kind of journaling. So I love that. Okay, so we got it. Journaling is not writing your blog post, peeps. It's not a blog post. It's assessing your inner thoughts.
Please don't pimp your pain for profit. We don't want that.
Oh, I love that. Pimp your pain for profit. Don't do it. Don't do it. Okay. So meditation, is there a particular way that you do it? What do you mean by meditation? Because I got to a space of acceptance and enjoying meditation in my own way. But I remember initially thinking, I am not sitting humming looking at a candle or silencing no, I need to think.
Exactly. And I think that, I don't know, meditation for some reason, I don't know if it's because of how it's translated from East to West and when it landed here, because of course, give it a Western style listicle, and all of a sudden there's like 10 steps to meditate, right? And you're like, no, like it doesn't work that way. Like meditation
is not a 10-step meditation plan you're going to give us?
No, I'm not. But I will give you options because I like options. And I think that's ultimately what this is about, right? You'll see a running theme here. So similar to journaling, and like you, I didn't come to meditation naturally. It was actually because my journey with self-care really started 10 years ago, as I mentioned, when I experienced burnout at age 22. I was a super high achiever. I graduated with 2 university degrees in 3 years at age 19.
Of course you did. Genius.
I've lost a few neurons along the way.
Yeah, but
then.
I think you could afford to.
Had to spread them around, had to be a little bit generous. But no, honestly, it was one of those things where when I burnt out, because I had high achieving tendencies, I was a box checker my whole life. I know a lot of women listening to this will resonate and nod their heads along to this, because that's what we're told to be. We are told to do all the right things, and somehow that's going to guarantee whatever success looks like. Mm-hmm. And add to that the fact that I was one of the few people who got a paying job in the midst of a recession, which extra level of imposter syndrome on top of that. And so in my head, I just thought, I'll do what I always do when, as a high achiever, I'm dealt with a challenge. I'm going to just work at it harder and hustle harder. And obviously that didn't work out in my favor. And I had to learn the lesson of just stopping. And so when I ended up leaving that job and kind of had to sit in this space of, how did I get here? Mm-hmm. And it was a massive transition to go from, what's the next thing that I have to do, to what feels like the next right thing for me. Ooh. That was a massive shift for a high achiever. And that started my practice of self-inquiry. So whether it was looking up, what successful people cited as part of their morning routines, whether it was diving into different meditation practices or journaling. The Artist's Way is a book that I recommend often to people who are looking for, it's kind of this old vintage 80s woo-woo book of like spirituality and creativity together. It's a fantastic way to start a journaling practice. I was going through all of these things and I happened upon meditation. Again, it was another common thread through almost every quote unquote success story of people that were, had the same hours in the day as I did, but were succeeding and not burning out in the process. And meditation was one that I just had to learn. And I didn't land on it right away. Sitting still when you're a naturally ambitious, high achieving person is not natural.
Well, not only is it not natural, it feels like a flipping waste of time.
It does, because you're like, how do I optimize this moment? That's where your brain is going. And that's not the point of meditation.
Darn it. I know, because that was me. I was like, okay, I'd be sitting there going, oh, great time to come up with the grocery shopping list. And if I do that online on the way home, and okay, how do I remember this? Like, that's where my brain is going.
Exactly. And so I think so I studied, God, I tried everything. It didn't stick. And now I would say I've been consistently meditating twice a day, 20 minutes a day for the past going on 2 years at the time of this recording. And so that obviously took a while to get up to. But before that, I was trying different apps, the Insight and Headspace.
Yep.
Insight Timer and Headspace. So I did a fusion just there. Both of those apps were super helpful for me at the start of my journey. I continue to use the Insight Timer app when I need a little bit of guidance. So I want a guided meditation. There's an amazing collection of whatever your poison is, pick it. And it's like, do you want to go super spiritual woo-woo, or do you just want some very nice gongs in the background to mark the time? It's got everything there. I read books on it. I, did kind of free courses on it. I did meditation challenges with like Deepak Chopra and Oprah. I did all of that. And then I finally just realized one day that what made meditation stick for me was the fact that when I had, as somebody who's now been diagnosed with clinical depression, has bouts of anxiety that come up naturally when you're doing things like, running a business in 2 languages and putting yourself out there constantly every day for your clients and for yourself. You're always out of your comfort zone. What I found was with regular meditation practice, I had enough headspace to actually navigate those ebbs and flows much better than when I didn't. And I could also see when I had an anxious stream of thoughts, which tends to happen for anyone who's listening to this and has had anxiety or suffers from it or has learned to live with it, you're able to distance yourself from the thoughts as not you much quicker when you meditate. And I think that was the thing that made it stick for me. I was like, oh, so I'm doing all this mental heavy lifting, weightlifting essentially, to take care of myself for the moments that when ish really hits the fan, and you guys have all had those moments, it will carry me through, and I will come out the other side not broken, but maybe a little bent instead.
I kind of, something that came up while you were talking about like lifting weights, it's like if you lifted weights 24/7 all the time, your muscles are going to break, and it's no different if you're just constantly freaking thinking. So the meditation, like I meditate occasionally, I do journaling as well, but I noticed that if I don't do it, like my brain just needs the break for a moment. It needs to stop.
Yes, it needs the stillness.
But it took me a while to recognize that stillness is exactly what I need. And because I'm constantly looking for, where's the efficiency? How can I, it's just, I would talk to my husband in the morning. We used to wake up, and I remember I used to wake up so freaking anxious because I'd get up, and from the moment my eyes opened, my brain was switched on, building the list for the day. Like that, and he'd roll over and go, "Morning, babe." And I was like, I can't, I need to get up now. Because it would be so much. I needed to get out of bed and just start doing it. Whereas when I'd get up and say, okay, let me sit down and take a few moments, do a meditation, guided meditation or something like that, what would happen is they would all slot themselves into place. I'd get a really nice list without any of the angst.
That's amazing.
Or something I thought was really important, I'm like, oh, babe, I could do that tomorrow. Do you know what? I'm just going to give that my assistant. It would just kind of slot itself into place. So I think for people who may be listening to this, like, why would I need that? There's different, like you say, there's lots of different ways of doing it. But I mean, the principle is really just taking a moment to have some space in the mind that's constantly cluttered. It's just to kind of consciously say, we're just gonna hit the pause button for like 10 minutes.
Exactly. Or I mean, I feel like even when I first started out, 5 minutes in the day, that was enough. I think if you don't have 5 minutes in the day to just sit still and be with yourself, then we might have to revisit some of your priorities. Because as busy as I was, as busy as we all are, as, ambitious as you may be listening to podcasts like this one or looking for the next thing that you need to get done, 5 minutes is all you need to just sit and be with yourself. And that practice of self-inquiry and self-reflection, whether it's through journaling or meditation, is just a healthy habit to cultivate in general. And it's going to set you up in such great stead for anything else that you want to do.
So powerful. I think start simple. Meditate in the shower if you have to.
Exactly.
It's just consciously picking a time where you say, okay, with my morning coffee, I'm not looking at my emails. I'm not looking at anything else. That is just my time to sit and be with me. Or it's just my time, put some relaxing music on and just have that moment. And that's all it is really. It's the moment to just stop. Just stop. Shh, quiet. Okay. So I now understand that journaling is not blog posts. And meditating is pretty broad, and it's about kind of silencing the mind. And then the third one that you had, what was your third one again? It's just kind of popped out of my head. Yoga. Is that the stretchy stuff?
It is the stretchy stuff, but it's so funny because I realized as a work from home entrepreneur who has clients from different places in the world, and at this point has now earned her unofficial master's degree in waist-up dressing.
Everybody be doing it, and don't you lie. Those people would be turning up like, I'm dressed. Girl, I ain't even fully dressed. I'm going to tell you this is waist-up dressing right here.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of working from home. Own it. Embrace it. It's fine.
Lounge pants are the best.
Oh, so comfy. But honestly, it was one of those things where I realized that if I didn't do something that moved me, especially now. So at the time that we're recording this, we're right in the middle of lockdown here in Spain. We've been on lockdown for what month is it?
Okay,
we're
in April.
In April. It feels like September, but it's fine. So many of us are working from home, but on top of that, we're only allowed at the house for essential trips. And so
you wish it was non-essential, girl.
I do. It would be great. Yeah. Like anyone who has a dog right now, winning. Like I cannot.
You're like, why did I not buy a pet?
I have 2 cats, but I don't have a dog, and I can't take my cat out. They like have an anxiety attack every time I try to take them out to the vet. Like, it's not going to happen. So
Wrong animal.
exactly. But so we're not allowed to leave the house for things like a walk. And I miss that so much right now. That's actually the first thing on the top of my, actually, no, the first thing on the top of my list for when this is all over is to go outside and lie down on the grass and look up at the sky. That's honestly like number 1 right now. Number 2 is going on a walk.
You'll probably accomplish both of them because you have to go outside to walk to find somewhere to lay down to look at the sun. It's like done.
High achiever. It's like, you know, tick, tick. Old habits die hard. What can I say? So I realized that movement was super important for me, and especially now because I have a confined space that I'm working in here in our 2-bedroom apartment in Madrid. I have to move. And the easiest way to move, especially when I'm dealing with, you know, particularly hard, like client story that I have to process, or a deal that didn't go through, because those will happen, family loss, whatever it happens to be, that movement is not going to be my go-to HIIT workout. That movement is not going to be my, like, you know, 3K, 5K, whatever run, however long until I get tired. And then I'm like, oh wait, I have to go back home. It's going to have to be something that's gentle. It's going to have to be something that allows me to be with myself. Again, running theme here, meditation, journaling, and now yoga. And I found what I really loved about yoga, and again, it was one of those things it took me a while to get into, because one, almost everybody I saw had this like perfect, you know, straight up Lululemon out of the catalog outfit. And so that kind of turned me off, and a certain body type in all the yoga videos that also kind of turned me off for a while. But as I got into it, I realized that one, that movement was gentle enough for me to really just focus on breathing, which is really what it is. It's uniting body with breath. And the fact that it was a very humbling exercise for me. I think a lot of women, myself included, we have a very long, difficult relationship towards self-love with our own bodies, right? Because we're not just seeing our own messages through our bodies, but we're also seeing it through what other people perceive.
Yeah.
Right? And yoga, what it does for me every time I show up on the mat, whether I put on a video or I do my own practice and just kind of let what I feel and what my intuition says I need in that moment guide me, it helps me turn off one of those. Like, I don't have to worry about what other people are perceiving, but I don't care what leggings I'm wearing. I'm just am, and I'm at home, and I'm in my space, and I'm breathing, and I'm moving. And whether it's today, I just need to lie down in Shavasana and cry, which will happen, or I want a little bit of fire and I want to try, you know, some poses that, you know, maybe I don't have necessarily the flexibility yet for, or the upper body strength yet for, but the process of showing up and doing it every day, that practice is so empowering, because one, I see the progress every time I show up on my mat. 2, I'm able to be in my body and not worry about anything else and fully disconnect, which again, former high achiever, very, very hard to do. So that 30 minutes on the mat at the beginning of every morning when I'm going through a hard time, powerful. And 3, that humility, I then carry off into the world with me. In my client interactions, when I aim for a bigger, you know, corporate client, if I'm sending a proposal, or, you know, even just pushing myself out of my comfort zone, trying to do things like, and this is where I'll be speaking to you later, like applying for a speaking gig in the future, whatever happens to be, I'm able to do that because I can approach it with the humility, not with an attachment to the outcome, but from a knowledge that every action, like being on the yoga mat, is moving me towards something that is, you know, closer than I was yesterday. And that's all that matters.
Love that. So, girl, you get layers in what you be talking about. I mean, you got to listen close, peeps, because Kay be dropping it in layers and it sounds like it's one thing, but it's like 5 things, but she just like rolls it off her tongue like it's simple. So I just want to pick up on a couple of things in there. Like, firstly, this idea of being, like having that space every day where you can be and be with yourself, versus something like running or HIIT where you can hide. Because it's not quite the same thing. There's something about, you're still holding it, you're getting the kind of physicality about it, but you're not doing it for the physicality. You're doing it for the breath work and the slowness and the stillness and the beingness of it, versus anything else. So I wanted to highlight that in case people be listening and that just skimmed right over them. I heard that. I heard it. I was like, oh, that's deep. That is deep. And then the other thing that I really want to pull out is what you said right at the end, which is it's not the result, it's the step and it's the growth. I have a little motto, pretty much everything I do. My husband laughs at me. I'm like, I am like, I must have like a PhD in what I have termed the chippity chip methodology, which basically means y'all can take this. It's important. It's deep, right? It basically means that rather than kind of sitting and doing everything, it's like, you know, you have that stupid analogy about like you eat the elephant one bite at a time. Who's eating the elephant? But the principle is, I'm just thinking, I'm like, why am I eating an elephant? But the principle is any big task, it's just one little action at a time. So when I decided I was going to get fit, I'm like, I'm not giving up. I am not giving up my vino in the evening. It's not happening. I'm not about to start changing what I'm eating. I eat reasonably balanced anyway. And I am not going on one of them diets where all I'm going to do is be like thinking about like the thing I can't have the whole time. So my diet has got to stay the same. It's going to be really easy for me to do. And I'm not giving up alcohol unless I'm about to get on stage and I really just need to like drop quick. That's the only time. It's like, all right, 2 weeks, booze is going to have to be on the shelf for 2 weeks because I can't afford to take in the alcoholic calories. But otherwise, them alcohol calories are here to stay. So instead, what I do is I'm kind of like, I can commit to 30 minutes 3 or 4 times a week. And that's the only thing I'm doing. But if I do it 3 or 4 times a week and it's easy for me to do, I look forward 2 weeks and I can see a difference, right? It may take a little bit longer, right? But I don't have to feel exhausted at the end of it. I just have to know that if after 2 weeks I feel better, I do it for another 2 weeks, I feel and look better again. Fast forward 3 months, people are like, what you be doing, beach body? And I'm like, nothing really, just 30 minutes every now and then. And I love what you say about the yoga is not about the precision and the perfection of it. It's about that it was done. Because actually you'll get better. Like the flexibility will come. You'll hold those poses that bit better, but it's the doing. And I don't think that's just yoga. I think there's a gift in that for all of us to remember that the result or the journey is, you know, the journey of 1,000 miles is taken one step at a time, peeps. It's all coming through today. I think it's Kay. It's all that wisdom. It's all that meditation, self-reflection wisdom. It's like, bam. You know, one beautiful step at a time. Oh my goodness, Kay, you've gone and done it. You have gone and done it. So people are going to be listening to this and they'll think, there'll be people who are hearing this right now and you have just spoken to their souls. They're like, I'm feeling on the outskirts. I know that I'm not, I'm underrepresented. I'm really ready to step it up and do more stuff. I like love this idea of story and I want to understand what mine is in a way that's going to be more empowering. Where do people connect with you? Now, bearing in mind, all of this stuff is in the notes. So you can write it down now, peeps. Or if you're on YouTube or any other platform, you're watching this listening to this on a podcasting platform, like just press that button for the notes, and then you'll see all of the details. But if you're in a rush, get your pen and paper, except if you're driving. Because that would be irresponsible.
Please don't do it if you're driving. But if you are if you are listening and you resonated with any of this stuff, I would absolutely love to continue the conversation with you over at kfabella.com. So my name, I will spell it for you, Kay, F as in Frank, A as in Apple, B as in boy, ELLA.com. So think Fabella and you're good. And you can also check out my podcast called Inclusion in Progress, where I talk about, especially for minority leaders who are looking to step up their visibility. And if you want to dive into some of the self-care practices that I have taken with me over the past 10 years and beyond, you can check out my book, which is called Rewrite Your Story, How to Find Who You Are and Thrive After Burnout. And that's available on Amazon.
Bada bing, bada boom. You've also got a little giveaway for us, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do. I love me some stories.
Girl, tell me. So for those people who were like, Kay, you got more? What else you got?
Yeah, well, I am opening up my calendar for anyone who's listening to this show. Tell me that you came through Lovelda's show, and I will block out 30 minutes just for you, for us to chat through your story. figure out what it is that you want to say and how you want to put it out into the world. And you can check out that link as well in the show notes, which I know Lovelda will make available for you because she is super over-prepared.
Check out the notes, peeps. Kay, this has been beyond fabulous. I'm like, giving me life. What one thing, I'm going to have you help me wrap this show up. I'm basically going to outsource the wrapping up of the show because, why not? But you got so much wisdom. I figure you may do this better than me today. So I'm going to hand it over. I'm going to hand it over. What one thing would you really like to leave our guests with today?
It's never too late to rewrite your story. Whether that's in the moment that you are living through right now, or, deciding anxiously, that this is not how you want your story to end. It doesn't have to stay stuck this way. So you get to pick up the pen and turn over to a new page and write your next chapter. So never think that it's too late.
It is never too late to change your story and rewrite your story. This has been the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast. If you are not subscribed, you need to hurry up and do that. Like, why have you not done that yet? Make sure that you leave us a review as well. Jump on, if you want to see what all of our guests look like, jump across to the YouTube channel as well. Subscribe there. Hit the bell so you get notified as well as soon as we add a new episode. Until next time, go out there, rewrite your story in the way that's most powerful, that's going to make you smile and make your heart sing. This has been the Lovelda Show Women of Power podcast. See you in the next episode.